GM, good morning. Welcome to the Milk Road Show, the daily crypto show that keeps on going, even when you have maybe fully checked out. We're here to tell you the markets are still here. Don't panic, everybody. It's February 27th, Thursday. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton, and today we are joined by Paul Mampilly, former Wall Street hedge fund manager, did 30 years there and then got crypto pilled and made the transition over to Bitcoin. Now writes a great newsletter, ATG newsletter. Today, we are going to talk about why Paul is so confident that the Bitcoin and the crypto bull market is still on. We're going to look back at some charts from 2016, 2017 cycle and show you guys how we're actually following a very similar pattern. We're going to talk about why Paul is so confident in ETH outperforming some other alts throughout the cycle. And at the end, we're going to talk about Paul's Bitcoin price target for year end or cycle end. Before we jump in, I got some really exciting news for you guys. We have been cooking over here at Milk Road, and we have just launched Milk Road Swap. We worked with Cow Protocol to create our own DEX. And on this DEX, you can trade Ethereum, Base, Arbitrum, and Solana, all on those chains. That's right. We might be one of the only DEXs in the space where you can trade both Ethereum tokens and Solana tokens all in the same place. How did we do that? We did it by partnering with CowSwap and Radium to create this great DEX. And because we love you guys so much, we're taking really low fees. So we're only taking 0.15% fees on this DEX. That compares to Uniswap, which takes 0.25% fees, or if you're over on Coinbase, where they're taking 0.5% to 1.5%. So if you want a great place to trade with low fees all in one place, check out the Milk Road Swap DEX today. Link is in the show notes. And if you're new to crypto and you want some advice on how to trade, how to swap, we got a bunch of helpful guides as well. So check it out. Today's episode is brought to you by Crypto.com. Some of my favorite cards in the space. Great perks. Lots of reason to check them out. Hit the link in the show notes. Without further ado, Paul, welcome to the Milk Road Show.
Thank you for having me on, Jay.
Paul, you might be one of the most stylish guys we've ever had on the show. I've never had somebody wear a scarf on the show before.
There's always a first for everything, Jay.
Oh, I love it. You're bringing some style to us, which is great to see. Okay, let's start with just high level market today. We're just nuking right now, just nuking.
Yeah.
What's your thought on where we're at?
Having been in markets for 30 years plus, sat through 2008. Heck, I'm old enough to have sat through 2000 tech crash, etc. Yeah, it's in the very nature of all markets. People get very optimistic at high prices, lever up, and then they get liquidated out at the lows. People clear out, get very pessimistic. There's who's buying at the lows? Well, it's people with a lot of conviction, people who know the assets very well. And of course, our friends, intermediaries, market makers, dealers. Yeah, they're gobbling up, all the low cost inventory, which they will be happily, resell back to you at much higher prices. When you become optimistic at higher prices, you'll be like, oh, you want yours back? Oh, well, 100% markup. Yeah. So, it's all fairly, routine. What is going on? Certainly with Bitcoin, from top to bottom, 109,000-ish, 110,000-ish to what? 83 is 23%.
Yeah, let me bring up this.
It's not a lot.
Yeah, let me bring up this chart that you shared. Yeah, that's a good point. Like we're not down that much. It feels
correct.
Feels a lot different. So give us the human psychology standpoint here, because human psychology plays such an influence on investors and traders.
Yeah, if we were to extend this chart just a little bit earlier, like the previous sort of like human psychological, markers were 70,000. Why? Well, that was the old high in the 2021 era. And so, of course, if you miss selling there, you see it again, or you see it approach again, you're like, hey, I didn't get out. Yeah, sell. So then we clear those sellers. I think there was the move from about 73 down to 49, which is about 33%. So that was like move number one, clears out, the old high sellers. One section gone. Then we, of course, make the move to 100, and it comes with, of course, a lot of optimism, a lot of expectation, etc. And so this chart, you'll see that first to the moon, that's 108. and people, yeah, a few people have been liquidated out there, but like after it crashes, that's when the big bets, in my opinion, like actually get going. They're like, hey, this is going to the moon for real. Let's lever up. Let's take huge positions. Let's go aggressive. And then there's not quite enough juice to actually push this past 110 to 130 or 150. And then it just starts to hover. And now it's a weakening trend because why? Well, the folks with leverage, I mean, they have stop orders, they have limit orders. They're, as I like to say, the weakest of weakest hands. They want their money fast. They're very levered. They're in a big hurry. And yeah, they get liquidated once out. What? Yeah, I mean, at 91. And then, of course, yeah, then I think what we have just seen is like for this move, the final liquidation, which is that money has been cleared out of the market. And I believe it now sets the stage for us to now vault to the new highs that everybody was looking for before. Why? Because, well, I mean, you're not carrying these weak hands. The limit orders are not there, just essentially looking for these very small gains because with leverage, people can make money off fairly small gains, but those are weak markets. I would call, you want a hard market where those folks, yeah, the people are there. They're like, yeah, I don't really care. I'm buying it. When you buy at low prices, yeah, like I want really high prices. Yeah, and you don't really care about these small.
Nobody buys at low prices. I mean, so sorry, I
Yeah,
shouldn't. That's incorrect. Smart money buys at low prices.
yeah, yeah. People with
Retail,
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
conviction,
yes,
people who
exactly.
know the asset very well, and of course, I call it our friends, the dealers, intermediaries, market makers, which in crypto are Coinbase, Binance. I mean, they have a market making unit. So, I mean, there's of course a buyer of last resort in every market. It's true on for stocks and it's true for crypto. There is somebody buying there. It ain't you because you're selling. I mean, the reason why markets are crashing is not because everybody's buying, it's because everybody's rushing through the same door at the same time. I'm out. I mean, if you go to social media, I'm out is probably like the most common thing you'll see. I'm out. I'm out. So they're out. But somebody is going in at that
Mhm,
price. Yeah.
mhm.
And they will come. I mean, when you come and you want back because like, hey, the sentiment improves, the mood is better, the prices will be higher.
So, do you think we've bottomed here where we are around 85K, or do you think we have lower to go? Like, could we get down to 70? Do you think?
I put this in our ATG digital group chat that like, hey, 70% would be about, I mean, sorry, not 70, 30% from the top would be about 77,000, right? So I'll throw that out there as a possibility because of course we had another 30%-ish move. And having studied the 2016, 2017 cycle, the downs were about the same. They were all in the range of like about 30%.
Mhm.
So there's that
So you
possibility.
wouldn't be surprised
Correct.
to see
That's
that. Yeah.
correct. If it
Yeah.
went to 77, that's also kind of like the election pump sort of like begins from there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be a total cleanse of that
Yeah.
entire pump. Yeah. So that's a possibility. But going by the amount of panic, emotion, pessimism that's going on, I'd say 50, 60%, this could be it.
Okay.
Could be it because there is more institutional demand, there's more awareness of Bitcoin, there's more ways to buy in 2016, 2017. Really, I mean, you could kind of like buy in through Coinbase, but Coinbase had just begun in 2015. GBTC was the only other game in town. So like now you can buy Bitcoin 100 different ways. So a lot more people aware, and we know there is known institutional demand that was been waiting for lower prices.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had an episode earlier this week with RVR from Key Rock, one of the largest market makers and OTC trading desks in the space. And he said flat out, he was like, our phones are ringing off the hook. Like, he's like, we have never had so much institutional demand and interest as we've had in the past 3 months. And as you said, they're smart. They're not buying the high prices. They're waiting for these
And
washouts,
they're
which they
not
know are
going
going to
to
come.
care if Bitcoin goes to 77.
Mhm.
They're not buying for a 10% move, right? I mean, unlike the retail traders on Deribit using 100x futures, Yeah, I mean, or 50x futures. I mean, yeah, they're not buying for that, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to be phased. They will. I mean, I used to buy. I used to manage a very large hedge fund. This is the way professionals buy. We don't buy all at once, right? I mean, I remember we did have one client that was buying through the 2008 crash. Talking about the stock market, we bought starting about like a little bit before the Lehman crash, and we bought for 6 months straight every day a little bit. That's the way,
That's the way.
it's called an investment program. You assign an amount and you set it over time and you buy a little bit, trying to capture an average price rather than like, this is the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why every retail investor should just DCA and keep it simple and don't overthink it.
Correct.
Let's talk about some historicals here.
Sure.
So I'm going to bring up a chart from the 2016, 2017 cycle, what
Yeah.
happened post halving. Take us, before we actually talk about this, take us through from an economics perspective. Why is the halving such a marker and an important event, which you think is an anchor to look at for future cycles as well?
Right. So I've gone and studied monetary and financial history. Again, I can find no other monetary asset of any kind where the new supply gets halved like programmatically, right? Every 960,000 blocks, which approximates to every 4 years. There is no other asset in human history where that happens without any human intervention. It just, whether you like it, dislike it. I mean, even if human beings were not there, the halving, if the computers are working, the halving's happening. Right? This is going to keep going. So, yeah, it is. If you're going to cut the new supply of something by 50% and it is finite, you cannot make more because somebody says, oh, we had a crisis, make some more. Oh, my Uncle Bob would like a few more. Can we make some more for him? No, I mean, it's finite in a real way. And you cut the new supply every, 4 years, essentially. As I like to put this out there, it's like, imagine if, right, if gold supply was finite and they cut the supply every 50% every 4 years, what would the price of gold be?
A lot higher, probably.
Yeah, it'd probably be $1 billion, something. I mean, it'd be something insane because it would just capitalize. I mean, because there's no new supply, and people are like, the price is going up. I'm not giving up my gold. Are you
Yeah.
crazy?
What is the do you know what the supply increase rate on gold is?
It's approximately between 2 and 3%
Okay,
per year.
annually? A
Per year,
year?
correct.
Interesting.
Right. And
Interesting.
as the price goes up, of course, the gold miners are stimulated to go and find more expensive deposits, chase after, more expensive gold, etc. But
Mhm,
that doesn't happen with Bitcoin.
mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so
So,
take
yeah.
us through take us
So,
through
so
take us through this cycle. What happened
we've
last
only had
time?
like, 2012, 2016, 2020, and now the fourth halving. So the 2016 halving, I compared to this one because there's parallels, which is like I said, Coinbase comes about in 2015, which is kind of like the most legal, easy-ish way to buy Bitcoin. So finally, there's a way for many people to get in, small institutions, the first emergence of some hedge funds, and then GBTC starts to take in a fairly large amount of money. Now, there was that in the 2012 cycle, none of that really existed. It was I mean, I read about people that were dealing Bitcoin out of Taco Bell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a dude that would hang out at
Yeah,
Taco Bell and
that
he'd have a little, like a zip drive, and he'd hand you, like,
uh,
here's your Bitcoin. There's even like, anecdotal evidence of people writing in, passphrases and like, here's your. So, I mean, it was essentially like a craft market. And then suddenly it jumped to a sort of like not institutional market, but a regular retail market where it's online. So then you get this enormous jump. Similarly, in this cycle, we've got like similar things. Like we have the Bitcoin ETF. How much? I mean, that's already taken in so much money. I mean, what, 20, $30 billion? It's barely been in business for a year. So that's like, Coinbase and GBTC kind of put together. Then you have the emergence of like a super buyer like MicroStrategy. We didn't have that. So you've got these elements which are quite similar. In other words, big time institutions with the ability to absorb. I mean, so far it's tens of billions, but potentially hundreds of billions, right? I still remember in 2017, just waking myself, I was like, are you kidding me? Bitcoin's at 3,000? And then I blinked and suddenly it was at 4,000. And you can see, like, I mean, the jumps starting month 11 are just
So
you.
when you say month 11, you mean month 11 after the
Correct.
halving,
Yeah. I mean,
right?
yeah, you'll see
Is
those
what you
numbers in orange. Yeah. Are like the months. The number one is the halving, which was on July 9th, 2016. So I count that as month one. Um, but starting month 11, you have the demand overwhelmed, supply by such a factor that, like, yeah, I mean, essentially doubled in a month. Now, in today's world, that seems unthinkable. Like the idea that we could go from 100,000 to 200,000 in a month seems unthinkable, but it was equally unthinkable then. It was equally unthinkable then. It was also completely not even in the realm of reality that anybody rational would ever pay $10,000 for one Bitcoin. I mean, not possible. Just like today, when I first put it out there that I believe that Bitcoin could trade for $1 million at the peak, um, people are like, "You're stupid, you are dumb, you're crazy." The technical analysis says this. I was like, listen, I've gone and looked through every halving cycle, and they all have a similar picture. But there are the things that changes in each halving cycle are the demand factors, which you talk about your viewers being sensitive to liquidity factors. So the things that are known about Bitcoin, well, finite, 21 million, halving cuts new supply by half. But the unknown is like how much demand will come in response to what I call that supply shock, right? So then you have to look, it's like, well, what are the rivers flowing into Bitcoin? In 2020, what did we have? Nothing really new, right? I mean, we had Celsius, we had all this, but there were not avenues for, like, I mean, there were kind of frauds at FTX, but there was nothing like the equivalent of a Coinbase or GBTC, nothing new. But this cycle, we've got huge new liquidity avenues, right? MicroStrategy could borrow another 10 billion. I mean, Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund has, quietly piled up 450 million in their ETF. Well, I mean, how many others are going to copy them? I
Mhm.
mean, there's
Yeah.
30 states in the United States that are discussing a Bitcoin reserve.
Yeah,
In
Utah's close. I
they're,
think
they're, the,
Utah's
they're the
leading.
ones that is, yeah, they're furthest ahead
Yeah.
in it. But, I mean, there's one being discussed even in North Carolina. Then there's the US Bitcoin reserve. And if one goes, that then the next one will follow, the next one will follow. So that's what, where people say, where will this money come from? How will you get that large of a market capitalization? Well, I mean, you'll get it, from all of these avenues which have access to trillions of dollars. I mean, the world's assets under management, I've seen a couple of numbers, like 700 million, six, 700 trillion to about 900 trillion. So I mean, we're nothing. We're a pimple,
Mhm.
on that universe. So there's a lot of money and a lot of asset classes that absolutely could flow out, and everybody gets it today. Like almost nobody hasn't heard of Bitcoin. I mean, people, the ECB is like they have to deny that they won't be buying Bitcoin. That's where we are, right? I mean, so everyone on some level recognizes, the essentials, which is like this is the ultimate store of value.
Yeah. And so what's interesting here when we look back at this chart is it does an interesting parallel is we did have 4 months of sort of resistance at 1,000 Bitcoin. It's crazy to talk about Bitcoin being $1,000.
Correct, but back
But
then
that's sort of a similar like a similar resistance. Now we have this resistance at 100,000 that we've
correct.
also been like if I go
And
to
that's a
this cycle.
psychological marker for human
Mhm,
beings. And people ask
mhm.
me, why does it matter? And I say, why does running a marathon matter? It's 100 kilometers. I mean, we have these markers and they matter to us. 100,000 matters to a lot of people. It's driven a lot of supply, but it's quite similar. It's quite similar. Yeah,
And what we had in the 2016 cycle, 27 into 2017 was that there was a pullback before the big month, right? Before month
that's
11,
correct.
there was a big pullback. And so what you're seeing is that, hey, we're having a big pullback. We had a big pullback in month 10. Right now, we're actually having a big pullback in month 11 too. but you're seeing that you think we could have a similar breakout.
I believe we are going through that right now. There was always a risk. I was hoping it wouldn't do the same thing in the same way, or that like, okay, the demand factors would come in, but there's clearly enough supply of all the OGs that bought Bitcoin at hundreds of dollars or a few $1,000s and, bought large amounts of it. And they're like, yeah, 100K. I mean, do I really need to be here?
Good enough, right?
Yeah, good enough. And there's always going to be some number of those people at every, into every, like, yeah, halving that's like, hey, I've made my money, I'm good. Yeah. I
Totally.
mean, remember, like the
And
first, what, 16 million got minted out like in, like, for, the first few years, right? So yeah.
okay, let's step back for a second. I want to get to your Bitcoin price predictions for the rest of this cycle.
Sure.
But before we do that, let's just talk about ETH and the rest of. Well, let's focus on ETH first, and we can talk about the rest of
Right.
the crypto market if you'd like as well. What are your thoughts on ETH? Because ETH is obviously, if Bitcoin is dead, then ETH is like 1,000 feet underground dead. So
Yeah, I mean, the sentiment on ETH is death, like death. It's death warmed over times 100. I mean, people hate Vitalik. There's like all this, like this, essentially like a revolt brewing on crypto X towards Vitalik. There's some news on the foundation today, and people are like, "What are you doing? What's this?"
what
But
was the news on the foundation today? I haven't seen that.
I think I forget her name. Anna is going to become the president from having been whatever she was, the chairman, something
The
like that.
executive director or the chairman?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So that news came out today, and people like, "What are you doing? What is this
I
going to
thought she was
mean?"
stepping out. I didn't realize she was gonna
That was
stay in
the
another
previous, that was
role.
a little bit before. So I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So she's not stepping out anymore. She's
People
now
don't
going to
like
be the
that.
president.
Okay.
So people are like, "What is going on?" The truth is that I don't think like that has anything to do with it. I mean, you've got these enormous protocols which have real purpose, real utility. Chainlink, Uniswap, Maker, Aave, Compound, Synthetics. I mean, I could go on and on that actually have a real purpose, real utility, form like an alternative, like decentralized finance, alternative to TradFi, traditional financial system that's built on Ethereum. And that would drive usage. That would drive people to buy it. The sentiment, is driven very much by price. And one thing you'll notice actually in the current thing that Ethereum actually hasn't gone below that crash that we had a couple of weeks ago when Bitcoin went to 93. It hasn't gone below that. So in other words, that was market clearing. In other words, the sellers that were just going to be all out and gone on ETH were gone then. And so I just go back using my market experience psychology, which is like low sentiment, unhappiness, low prices tend to go together. But there's a buyer who is buying there at 2,200. Somebody was buying, right? I mean,
Somebody
yeah.
was.
Were they
Yeah.
dumb? Are they stupid? Are the people that buy at those low prices dumb? I don't think so. So, and the expectations for ETH now are like this is. I mean, I saw a post on X like ETH is a zero. It's less than a zero. Get out. It's a shit coin. This, that, and the other. I'm bullish on ETH. I think yeah, you're going to see a lot of trading show up on Uniswap. And then, that synthetic liquidity creation gets going using Maker and synthetics and Aave. And you'll see, I think, an enormous altcoin rally that will come as a shock because now no one's expecting it.
Mhm.
No one's expecting it. And it will take Ethereum, I think, at minimum to 20,000.
You think Ethereum will go to 20K
Correct.
this cycle? Wow, you're a big bull. Wow,
I
okay.
mean, yeah. I mean, we were at what? What was the low in the last cycle? Like 700?
Yeah, 800, I think, 7,
Right.
800, yeah.
And then, so we topped out at 4,400. It's only a bull market when you start making new highs.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
the new high goes from 4,400 and then we go from there. I mean, it's all unthinkable to people today, but I mean, we're so early in this revolution. Like, yeah, I mean, crypto will suck the liquidity, suck the marrow out of so many fiat assets that have no value. And they will go into the things that where, yeah, I mean, you can see how many, I mean, do you know how many dollars have ever been printed in history? I don't.
No.
But I know at any given time how many Ethereum are in circulation. We know where they are. We mean, so yeah, I mean, digital money, I mean, crypto money is so far superior to it. So of course, then if you built your asset markets on essentially something that has no backing, a lot of those assets have no backing. So they will come to buy Bitcoin and Ethereum. I am, as I like to tell my subscribers, BOP, bullish, optimistic, positive.
EOP. Okay. I like it. I like it. Let's talk about Bitcoin then for the rest
Yeah,
of this cycle and the rest of
sure.
the year. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for some time now, I
Well,
have been
actually, let
saying,
me let
yeah,
me
go ahead.
before let me cut you off because
Okay.
you can tell me what you think, but I just remembered you sent me a couple of charts to talk through
Yeah,
this, and I
yeah,
don't want to miss out on these charts
sure.
around Bitcoin production and mining costs.
Yeah,
So let me bring them up and you can go ahead.
yeah. I mean, so like most people don't track this. I track this very closely. One thing you'll see is that the cost of producing a Bitcoin just broke out to a new high. And most people think like, well, that doesn't matter. I mean, there's actually a pretty established relationship between the cost of production of a Bitcoin in dollars and then what, people are willing to pay for it. And I also sent you this chart, which is not as clear, but the bottom panel of that, you'll see that where on the bottom panel where it actually is dipping to the low, the black line, and is it blue or green? I guess it's kind of greenish.
Green.
Yeah, green. So yeah, where you have the cross mark there, yeah, at that point, Bitcoin price in fiat USD is nearly 8 to 9 times cost. So that's the peak of the 2016, 2017 halving cycle. And then if you go to 2021, it's about 3 times. So if you want to come up with a kind of like, hey, based on math, if you will, or cost, maybe you'd be bullish and say, well, 8 to 9 times, what the cost is. So we're at about 92,000 and it's going higher because I saw something today saying electricity prices are going higher and the demand for electricity is skyrocketing. So 92 is not the top. It's going to keep going from here. So let's say we get to 100 or 110,000 come the end of this year.
As the cost to produce one Bitcoin would
Bitcoin,
be would
correct.
be 100 to 110,000.
110,000, yeah, 8 or 9 times that, 10 that, we're at nearly a million.
And just to be clear, where do you get that eight to nine times from?
That's where it traded in 2017 at the top,
Right.
8 to 9 times. Yeah,
Okay.
eight
And
to nine
then
cost.
in 2021, it
It was
traded at
about between 2 and 3.
2 and 3 times. So
Right.
how do you decide, is it gonna do what it did in which cycle
Um,
is it gonna copy?
the pattern of like, like of how the price is going up and given the new avenues of liquidity into Bitcoin, in my judgment, point to this being close to the 2016, 2017 cycle. So much more money, and the money will come in at higher prices just like it did in 2016 and 2017. Price is what confirms people's thinking. At 150 or 200,000, there'll be far fewer objections than there are today at 85. I've seen this in every asset, in every stock, every investment. You know, people don't believe facts. People don't believe evidence. People don't believe research. Give me the price. Give me the pump, and I believe.
Which is the total wrong way to think about it. Total wrong
This
way,
is reality. We are
but it is
human
reality.
beings, and this is
Yes.
how we operate. I mean, like if you give people a bad piece of information and a rising price, they will believe the price. If you give people a piece of great information and a lower price, they will believe the lower price. So at 200, everybody will be like, where can I get more? At 400, yeah, they'll be like, oh my God. I mean, it'll be, yeah. And that's how you can get a doubling of price. Like, I mean, that's how in the 2016, 2017 price. So in December, Bitcoin went from 10 to 20, almost 20,000. And that happened in 3 weeks. That
Well, I
happened.
mean, a similar thing happened this year when we went from what, it wasn't 3 weeks, but we went from 45 to 1,000 to 70,000 in a few months, right? Like
Yeah,
from September to November.
correct. Yeah. I mean, once the price is high, nobody has a problem.
Mhm. Okay,
I mean, somebody's got to take in that low price merchandise inventory and hold it back. and then mark it up, and smash it into your face. Like, you want bin back? Yeah, pay 250.
So what do you take us through what's your range for
My
this
my
cycle?
my expectation is that Bitcoin will be at near above $1 million between end of October and early December this year. That's
This year.
this year.
Wow, you are the biggest bull in the room.
I
Holy
mean,
jeez.
I can even make a case that it would not be sustainable because there's always a post crash because there's excess that comes in and bids it too high. Like in 2017, you get to almost 20,000, and then the low after that is 3,500. So if I model it exactly like that, then we get to somewhere near 2 million, and then a 70% crash gets you back to 300,000. I know it all seems insane, and people
Seems
say,
insane.
Paul, you're effing mad, you're a crazy person. But hey, I remember in 2020 walking around, telling people it's going to hit 50,000 when it was like, I don't know, like, yeah, probably like 11, and people's like, that's ridiculous, and then it went there.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I mean, it seems insane, but we have never had an asset like Bitcoin. There's been never been an asset that's not issued by some sovereign nation, by some central bank, that's globally known,
Mhm.
where anybody with one of these or a computer or can buy it. And my kids buy Bitcoin every week.
Nice.
I was recently in Southeast Asia. People telling me how they take essentially the equivalent of like 50 cents to a dollar and buy Bitcoin. What
Amazing.
other asset in human history has that kind of behavior? Nothing. There's nothing like it. Yeah.
What's your base case for this year?
My base case, as crazy as it is $1 million.
That's your base case. That's your
Yes,
base
that's my
case.
base case. $1 million
Jesus.
with a crash coming about a year later, taking it back to 250,000 or something in that range.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. In
Okay.
other words, $1 million is not sustainable. Into
No.
that, you will have huge supply come in and be like, here, here, yeah, you hated it at 85, you love it at 1 million. Here, take,
Mhm.
take, take, take. And then that overwhelms, yeah, the demand. There's not going to be as much demand at 1 million, as there is on the way up. And then we will crash back to something like, on the low side, maybe 150, maybe 200. It's possible. Depends on what the high is. Because what? In 2012, the drop is something like 92%, then 86, 83% in 2016, the 2017 cycle, and then 77. So I have it modeled at like 72 to 75 relative to the top. Uh,
Right.
and if
Right.
it behaves in some other way other than this, then we're seeing some new post halving sort of like behavior trend. But in every halving, I think like the stock to flow model, like what Plan B, et cetera, essentially takes out one exponent and then crashes back. The last cycle, we didn't take out 100,000, but that's not a complete model violation in the sense that the model can overshoot in 2016, 2017, get to 20,000 from 10 to 20, can undershoot 100 and be at 70. So, I mean, if it doesn't do it, then yeah, I mean, but I'll say I think better 50-50. I'm right. 50 chance I'm right.
Well, we're gonna have to get you back on the show if you are right, and let you let you
Take my victory
talk
lap.
about
Yeah,
how
let me
yeah,
take a victory lap.
because I can tell you that a lot of our listeners are gonna say that you're insane, and it's not to say that they're not bullish, like they're also bullish and probably thinking. I think most of our guests are in the 150 to 250 range for cycle top
I
this
think
year.
that's a good bottom target for 2026.
For 2026. He's a bottom target,
Correct.
right? Okay. Well, hey, I'm not going to complain if you're right, Paul. That's for sure. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you for your
Thank you.
style and for taking us through these charts and all of these. The BOP man, very bullish, optimistic, and
Bullish,
positive.
optimistic, positive. Let's go. Come on. Don't get down. Yeah, don't get down. We're going to win. We're going to win.
I love
We're
the
going to
energy, my man. Appreciate your time.
win.
Thanks for joining us today. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
listening again, everybody. Have a wicked awesome day. We'll see you again tomorrow. As always, if you liked today's episode, please hit subscribe and make sure you follow us so you don't miss out on the next one. There's also a link in the description to our free 5-minute daily newsletter where we simplify crypto for you while making you laugh. And if you're willing to step up your crypto investing game, we're going to also leave a link for Milk Road Pro. You get access to our portfolio where you can see exactly what we are buying. This is your number one resource to help you invest successfully in crypto. One final note, this show is for educational purposes only, and nothing we say is financial advice. Investing in crypto or any asset is risky, and you should never invest more than you can afford to lose. Thanks so much for listening in, my friends. Have a wicked awesome day.